working with 2-pound mono. And that is, I mean, it's like thread. It's so, you can sew with it. It's so thin. So I was surprised to actually land that one at the boat once it came in, and it was, and to see the size, it was a good, I'm going to say it was like somewhere between 8 to 10 pounds. I can't remember the exact weight on it, but to get it through the rocks, and it had the scrape marks where it had been down in the rocks and trying to get away from me. So it was, I would say that was kind of unexpected, because I thought for sure once I knew I could feel them in there that I was going to break them off.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. I'm Angie Scott. I'm here at ICAST. I'm doing my first interview from the Waypoint booth this week, so it's a really cool space they've got set up here. And I have an incredible angler to introduce you to by the name of Jennifer Schall. Jennifer, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I'm excited.
So did you fish the ICAST Cup?
No, did not fish the ICAST Cup, but we just came off of a weekend of scalloping here in Florida, my first scalloping trip, which was a lot of fun.
Where were you scalloping at?
Out of the Crystal River area, so went out and had a great guide and put us on some scallops, snorkeled. That was my favorite part, honestly, was the snorkeling part. It was like swimming in an aquarium. I loved it.
Yeah, very awesome. I was down here over the winter time, and actually a year before last in the fall I was fishing in the Crystal River, and our guide was telling us about the amazing scalloping that they have.
Oh, that sounds like a blast too. We didn't fish. We did not fish, which was odd for us. We didn't do it this time, but we didn't think it would be safe to fish while we're scalloping with everyone snorkeling around. So,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So, are you originally from South Carolina?
My father was in the Navy, and we moved there when I was 12 years old. So he got stationed in Charleston in the late 80s, and we moved there. And I grew up. That's where I call home. I love it there. I wouldn't really want to live anywhere else at this point.
And so let's talk about how you got into fishing, and then we're going to talk about some of the amazing things you've done over the years. But how did you first get into it?
So I did fish some when I was little. My grandparents were big into fishing. We had family that moved I'm originally from West Virginia, and they moved from West Virginia to Melbourne, Florida. And we would always come down here for vacations, go and spend some time with them. My great uncle had a place on Lake Toho, and so he had a little fishing camp set up there. And my grandparents loved to bass fish, loved to go out and get the bass, get the largemouth. And then at home, they would always take us to the little lakes. You know, we might catch a little catfish or a little brim or something here and there. And then once we moved away from our family in West Virginia and moved to Charleston, South Carolina, we didn't really fish that much anymore. So I didn't really get back into it until my husband and I, Jason, got back together. He's a huge fisherman. He loves to fish. He's been fishing ever since he could walk, I think. And he was such a great teacher and was very patient with me while learning. And it's been great. So when we got together, I started fishing more with him, and now we just do it together. It's our thing that we love to do together. Okay. So that's how I've gotten back into it, I guess, from when I was a kid.
It's so important to have somebody, I think, to teach you, because there's such a steep learning curve when it comes to fishing that it can be overwhelming if you were just trying to figure it out on your own. And so having somebody that's been doing it as long as Jason has and has all the experience to kind of almost cut corners in a way and just kind of get you dialed in, faster than you could possibly do if you're just trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's, I mean, that does help, and I also think that it's helpful to have somebody who is patient because it's not going to be perfect. I mean, there's been plenty of times I've definitely caught more tree branches, I think, than I have, or cast in tree branches than in the water sometimes, and you lose some gear along the way, and just have those little hiccups, but I think it's important to have that patience whenever those things do happen, because I think that's someplace, or that sometimes can turn someone off if they get like, they feel like they've just lost maybe a $10 lure. That's it sucks, but you already feel bad enough. You don't need to be made to feel even worse because you made a mistake, or you didn't cast something the right way, or you cast it into the trees and you had to break it off. To have someone who's patient around those kinds of things, and knowing that that's just part of the learning process. And that's how I try to. Whenever we teach kids, or we teach anybody, take friends out even who haven't been fishing before. That's the same approach I like to take with them. Make it fun, and they'll want to come back and keep doing it, and more and more. Yeah.
So you started fishing with Jason, and did you start out tournament fishing, or teaching, or where did you kind of go from there?
So we started off mainly. So we do most of our fishing from a kayak. We have kayaks, and we go out in kayaks, and so that's how I really started to learn how to fish, and doing that and a little bit of shore fishing, and we. And not really getting much to the tournaments at that point. We wanted to still stay, just keep it fun and keep it easy, and then kind of eased into some local tournaments. We do a lot of catch and release fishing, so we always participated in a local tri-county tournament where we live. For tagging and catch and release for redfish, like any saltwater, like your main saltwater, and then some freshwater species like bass. You would get points for catching and releasing those fish. And we, for the years that tournament was in play, and that Jason and I were together, we were always the lead male and female angler for the Ecology Award, was what that was called. We also participate a lot in the South Carolina DNR's game fish tagging program, so we use that as part of our kind of like a little game to see who can tag the most fish and get those tag and release reports back whenever one of those fish get caught and reported. So it's always fun to be able to see where they go. So yeah, that's kind of how we started, was just kind of doing that conservation minded things with the tagging and that ecology tournament, and then just kind of expanded from there to trying to go after species and records and things of that nature.
Well, I definitely want to talk about that. But it sounds like conservation and giving back and teaching is really important to you. And I think that's important for listeners, to keep in mind, as we're going through your fishing journey, that it's always important to pay it forward once, you get to that point where you're comfortable. But conservation's always important to keep top of mind.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to keep the fishing population healthy enough for generations to come. I know that South Carolina has recently changed the limits on flounder, and it's to help protect the big females. The big ones that we normally get are females, and those are the breeding. They're gonna make all the little baby flounder, and we want those flounder out there to help keep repopulating and keep growing big and keep sustaining that population. So, because they're delicious fish, don't get me wrong, they're delicious fish, but we want to keep them around so we can continue to enjoy them for years and years to come. So I feel like that's an important role as anglers that we stress like that, the conservation side of things, as well as just being responsible harvesting as well. The tagging program with the DNR is great, because they collect data on the size of the fish, where they migrate, what their patterns are, and that helps them develop the rules and the regulations to bring forward to keep that protection in place. Another part of that conservation, like you mentioned, is teaching, and we're certified fishing instructors with the DNR. And so when we hold clinics, or even when we just take friends, family out on our own and teach them to fish, covering everything to help keep, especially for doing catch and release, how to handle the fish safely, especially, the difference in the temperature. When it's hotter out, we don't keep the fish out of the water for very long enough to get the hook out. But that's great too. We have a little net. We use some floating nets that we can keep the fish in the water, see the fish as they're swimming around, and be able to point out a lot of the features to the kids and see, like pinfish. We were just at a catch and release only lake with some friends of ours and their grandkids, and we caught a lot of pinfish and fun little fish to catch. But man, you get close to their little spikes on their back, and you'll be you'll know it right away. So we were covering that with the kids and making sure that they kept clear of those, but also pointed out the beautiful colors, how they blend in, how that helps protect, those little spikes on their fins, help protect them from prey and help camouflage them. And they loved it. It was fantastic. So yeah, we just do all of that, wrap all of that into what we do, and just make that part of that experience when we go out.
I love, I always said pinfish are like the bluegill of the Gulf, or wherever you're catching them, because they're little bait stealers. But bluegill have them little, their fins are pretty sharp too, so they always remind me of that. Is most of the teaching, the education you do through the DNR programs, or do you do other?
We do yes, we do. I would say it's probably half and half DNR, and then also through other organizations like Bass Pro and Cabela's. We participate a lot in their regional store events and their catch and release ponds. They just finished up in early June their Gone Fishing event, and they had catch and release ponds at the store with bluegill this year, and you just put the little, they had some night crawlers out there, and you help the kids do catch and handle and know, and even proper etiquette. That's a great place to teach etiquette, because there are a bunch of kids around the pond, and you don't want these kids like slinging hooks and catching anybody else.
Right.
So making sure to say, okay, look before you cast, and make sure you're aware of your surroundings. You bring the fish in. We taught them how to hold them, either for those little guys on the line, or try to get them to cup them and hold them in their hands. And it was a great time. So I would say about 50-50 with DNR clinics, and then also at other outside events that we incorporate those concepts into it.
Cool. All right, now let's get to the really exciting part here. So I forget who told me it was either Debbie Hansen. It was probably Debbie Hansen who told me to contact you, and you've got to meet Jennifer and have her on the podcast. And she's got all these world records, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so exciting. So I want to talk about these world records and your journey in getting these. And let's just start with the first one. Did you go after it with the intention of trying to get a world record, or?
Yes, we did. So again, my husband Jason, who's been fishing for his entire life, has been going after world records himself for a long time, and he introduced that to me, and started with all the research. So that the very first record I got was catfish records. We targeted those records, and the important part about going after any record is it's a lot of research. A lot of research goes into the size of the fish. So we're going after line class records, hoping for an all tackle record, which would be great. But line class records, and so knowing the size of the fish that you have to be on that line class, and having that line class available, having line that will test at that line class. So it's really important to go after like IGFA rated line or braid, so that way, because that's going to be more likely to test at that line class that you're going after than some stuff that you buy that might say 10 pound, but it might actually break at 11 or 12. So you want to make sure that you're hitting right at that mark. So having all of your line available, knowing the size of the fish that you need to catch to beat the current record. So that way you have an idea of what size of fish that you need to go after, and then picking the place that you're going to go. Luckily for us with catfish, we have some great catfish waters around our home near Charleston, where there are a lot of records already set in that area in the Lake Marion and Lake Moultrie of around South Carolina. So we went out specifically targeting all of those, and while you're going after those records, you have to keep track of what line class you are using. So we bring multiple spools so that we can change out the spools really easily with our reels. Whenever we get one, we can change to another. And then once you catch the fish, all the measurements that go into it. So you have length measurements, you have girth measurements that you have to take. You have to take pictures, close-ups of all those measurements, plus pictures of the whole fish, plus pictures of the head, pictures of the tail, the weight. You have to weigh a fish on land, like so on dry land on a dock. You can't be on a boat or on a floating dock. You have to weigh it standing on ground. And pictures of all that, pictures of the angler with the fish. So there's a lot that goes into it. And so we, when we did the catfish records, we did keep those because catfish are good to eat, and we were out on a boat, so we did keep a lot of those fish. But it was fantastic. I can't. And it sounds terrible. I can't remember every single line class that I got those records on at that time, but it was anywhere from like 2 to maybe like 16-pound tests that we were doing the records with at that particular time. But it was great, and it was again my first time, so it was very exciting. The second species, the record I got was a grouper on 2-pound test, a gag grouper that we caught out of Tampa. And again, went with a friend of ours who knows where to target them, but still did all the same thing, researching the weight that we need and the size of the fish that we need and when to go get them. And that one we did release. And I'm big on that now too. I want to release a lot of the fish. Like if they're going to get me a record, I want to see them swim away. So there have been times where we've caught fish that would have been records that we've bypassed that whole process because we don't want to keep them out of the water. We don't want to have to drag them back to land and so forth.
Right.
But it is pretty exciting. We do the process once you get home and you have all the pictures, that you have to send in line samples, you have to send in the lure or the hook that you used. So we have to put all that together, and it takes a few weeks to get all that together and then send it off to be certified. And so now, we just came off of a big trip where we have some pending records. Now we're just waiting for those to get certified before we talk about them too much.
Right. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So I know it's always hard to pick a favorite, but do you have a favorite that you can think of, or a special experience with one? I'm sure they're all special experiences. I can't imagine. Some people would work their whole lives for just one world record, so it's amazing.
So the one, and this is one that was never certified. It was one of the ones that we released. But we went down to Belize a couple of years ago, and everyone goes to Belize. They go after a permit. They want to catch the permit on the fly, and it's a great place for that. We had 3 days with a guide. And on our first day, we asked him, how is the permit fishing right now? How's that going? And he was like, it's a little tough. And so we said, we want to catch fish. Like we don't want to go out all day long and just chase one fish and maybe sight one. And we want to go and catch fish. So he said, all right, we're going to go and catch some fish. And so one of the fish that's in that Caribbean area, in that Central America Caribbean area, is a fish called a bay snook, and it's a freshwater, or it could be a little bit brackish water, live in brackish water, and they look kind of like almost the colors of like maybe a peacock bass, a smaller peacock bass. But their mouth comes out, the way they feed is a tube. So whenever they go to eat something, they make their mouth into this big, long tube, and it looks kind of like a little vacuum, and they just suck up their food and go back in. Something you can't find in the States, can't find anywhere else. And so we went on this big adventure to get to a freshwater area from the launch point where we were. Drove about an hour, ported the boat through this old rickety dock that had holes in it, and through this marsh until we got to this little freshwater area. Got in there and caught this bass. So funny, Jason was fishing with a little tiny hook. Caught a minnow, caught a little belong, and I used that to put on my hook, and that's what I caught my bass snook on. Nice. And it wasn't a very big fish, but because they're not easy to catch, and people don't go to Belize, they don't target these. They don't go to Belize and say, I want to catch a bass snook. That's just not, they don't hear that. And so there's really not a whole lot of like any records or anything on them. So it would have, I think it may have even been a new species that wouldn't have been in the IGFA. I'm not certain on that, but there weren't very many. And so what we caught would have been a record, but we would have had to go all the way back to land. We couldn't stand in the water. There were crocodiles around, so we couldn't stand in the water to weigh it. And so we released it, took some pictures, gave it a little kiss, and let it go on its way. But that's probably one of the most memorable record, non-record, I guess,
right.
that I've gone after. Beautiful fish, beautiful setting. Yeah.
So unexpected one, really, I guess. Or were you kind of thinking you were?
Unexpected. I think whenever we went after that gag grouper, it was on 2-pound test, and I can't remember the exact weight, but it was a good size fish. I thought I was going to lose it. He went into some rocks. I could tell he was going in the rocks, and we were working with 2-pound mono, and that is, it's like thread. It's so you could sew with it. It's so thin. And I thought I was going to lose it. So I was surprised to actually land that one at the boat once it came in, and to see the size. It was a good, I'm going to say it was like somewhere between 8 to 10 pounds. I can't remember the exact weight on it, but to get it through the rocks, and it had the scrape marks where it had been down in the rocks and trying to get away from me. So it was, I would say that was kind of unexpected, because I thought for sure once I knew I could feel them in there that I was going to break them off. So
I imagine it really comes down then to your equipment and your settings on your equipment to be able to land something like that on 2-pound test.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Things have to be right. You have to be patient. You can't horse them in. You can't. You got to keep the line tight, but not too tight. And you don't want to pull that knot right out of the hook. And have your equipment right. And that's what I said too with the line. You want to make sure that your line is an IGFA rated line if you're going after records, because you want to land the fish, sure, but you also want to have that certified at the IGFA when they test the line and they test where that breaking point is. So having all that right equipment, having the right setup, having somebody who can net the fish for you, and not like get the hook out of
exactly.
is important too. So I'm very fortunate to have. Like I said, Jason is a master at it, and to have him help me along in that, and then the guides or the people when we go out, either if we are going out with somebody, to have their knowledge on the fish and how the fish react, and we can use that to make sure that we're landing and handling the fish correctly too. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about?
Not. So we just came off of a big trip where we went after alligator gar and paddlefish in Oklahoma. So first time I had caught either species, which was a lot of fun. The alligator gar, amazing species. Loved it. They were. They're just such a cool fish. Once you land them and you get them close to you, and you can hold them in your lap, to see their scales and their eyes and how they're just taking in everything. It's really, really cool. And the paddlefish was amazing as well. That never caught paddlefish before, and they're good fighters, but also just a cool fish to look at. They don't have scales. It's kind of like catfish skin, and they were incredible. So yeah, we just came off of that road trip. We're planning an extended trip to Vermont later this year, where we're going to be up there. We're going to catch in like the touristy, the leaf season, the fall colors.
Beautiful.
but also we'll be going after some landlocked salmon and some trout up in that area too. So we're really looking forward to that. We'll see Jason. Jason told me is like as soon as we're done with ICAST, he's like, I'm on to Vermont, so he's going to start doing the research and what species we can catch, what the records are, and we'll start planning for that.
That's awesome. That just sounds like an exciting life. You know, you always have something new to look forward to, so that's great. Well, where can people follow your adventures?
So we have Instagram and Facebook are the main sites, and you can find us using at OTW Schalls, SCHALLS, on the water with the Schalls is where people can find us and follow our adventures and keep up with what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of ICAST, and thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today. Love what you're doing. And one thing I wanted to mention too that I heard right before we did the interview is you have something, you always like to give the fish a little kiss.
I do like to give the fish a kiss before. I feel like it's a little good luck, and also maybe they'll tell their friends down there that the folks up above aren't so bad. So don't worry about it if you get hooked.
I need to start doing that. Maybe that's been part of my problem. But anyways, thank you again, and we'll look forward to following your adventures and seeing if these world records get certified and your Vermont trip and all the things you got coming up.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this, and I hope y'all have a good show too.
Thank you.